The night sky was never silent, but that night, it felt different. Stars glowed as usual, but then, they began to disappear, one after another. People in small towns and great cities looked up, pointing at the heavens. At first it seemed like clouds were covering the sky, but there were no clouds. The air was clear. Something else was blocking the stars. It started with one light, sharp and bright, streaking across the darkness like a falling star. Then another, and another. Soon, dozens of burning trails ripped through the sky. Children screamed with excitement, thinking it was the greatest meteor shower in history. Cameras clicked. Phones recorded. Social media exploded with live videos, but soon, excitement turned into silence. The falling lights did not fade. They slowed. They stopped. And then they began to grow larger. In every country, across every border, people lifted their heads to the same terrifying sight. They were not meteors at all. They were ships. Giant ships, cold, metallic, and glowing with strange purple-blue lights. Each one was larger than any human city, covered in alien designs that seemed alive, pulsing like veins of light across their enormous hulls. Above New York, London, Tokyo, Cairo, Moscow, and countless other cities, the sky opened. People poured into the streets, cars stopped on highways, airplanes froze in the air, rerouted by desperate controllers. Dogs barked, babies cried, and yet no one could look away. The largest of them all, a mothership so wide it covered the horizon, descended with slow, terrifying grace. From its underside, beams of light swept downward, scanning the earth below like smaller ships broke away from the massive vessel, hovering in formation. They hung in the sky like predators, waiting for the signal to strike. Then came the sound. It was not a noise that came from the air. It came from everywhere, from every phone, every speaker, every radio, even from televisions that were turned off. A deep, resonant voice shook the hearts of billions. People of Earth, your time is over. Surrender your planet, surrender your freedom, or face destruction. The words repeated, spoken in every human language at once, echoing across the globe. From the jungles of South America to the deserts of Africa, from frozen villages in Siberia to the tallest skyscrapers, every human being heard the same message. The demand for surrender, the promise of death. Governments scrambled. Presidents, kings, generals, and ministers rushed into underground bunkers. Emergency meetings were held in war rooms filled with flickering screens. Soldiers were ordered to stand by. Fighter jets took to the skies, though their tiny machines looked like insects compared to the alien giants. On the streets, panic spread like fire. Some people ran for cover, screaming about the end of the world. Others dropped to their knees, praying for divine salvation. Families hugged each other tightly, fearing they would not see another sunrise. But there were also those who simply stood still, frozen in awe. They had never imagined they would live to see this moment, the day humanity would meet life from another world. And this life was not friendly. This life came not with greetings, but with threats. The giant mothership lowered slightly, filling the sky with its impossible size. Its lights grew brighter, casting the ground in glowing shades of violet and blue. Shadows stretched long across empty streets as people stared upward. Some held up their phones, streaming the impossible sight to millions more. News anchors struggled to keep calm on live television. Scientists tried to explain what was happening, but their voices shook. Military leaders whispered to each other, knowing deep inside that human weapons were useless against such power. And yet, amid the fear and silence, something strange happened. Not everyone was afraid. A small group of people in Times Square looked up at the giant ship, and instead of screaming, one man raised his hand and waved. The crowd around him burst into nervous laughter. Across the world, similar moments appeared. In Rio de Janeiro, a group of young people played music, joking that they would welcome the aliens with samba. In Paris, someone projected a giant smiley face onto a building. Facing the mothership, the aliens spoke again, their voices shaking the air. People of Earth, obey, kneel, or be destroyed. But humans did not kneel, not yet. Instead, billions of hearts beat together in a silence that was not submission, but something else. A pause, a waiting. Humanity stood at the edge of history, facing an enemy greater than anything they had ever known. And though fear filled the night, another feeling began to rise: confusion, disbelief, and even the first sparks of mockery. The world was about to change. The message kept echoing in the air long after the alien voice had faded. Across the world, people stood in silence, not knowing whether to scream, pray, or laugh. The skies glowed with the pulsing lights of the motherships, and every second felt like the end could come crashing down. Humanity had faced wars, disasters, plagues, and countless tragedies before, but never anything like this. Never an enemy so far beyond their understanding. The world held its breath, inside underground bunkers. Leaders of powerful nations stared at screens, showing the same thing, giant alien vessels floating with impossible calm, like predators circling prey. Generals whispered about launching missiles, fighter jets, nuclear weapons, anything that could at least show resistance. But deep down, they knew the truth. No weapon on Earth could match what hung above their cities. Their eyes betrayed fear, even when their voices tried to sound strong. They were trapped and they knew it. In living rooms and streets, ordinary people clutched their phones, refreshing news feeds that only repeated the same words. Alien demand, Earth must surrender. Some cried as they watched. Some tried to gather supplies and flee, though no one knew where safety could possibly exist. Others fell silent, their minds unable to process what their eyes were seeing. But not everyone felt only fear. In bars, in homes, and in public squares, something unexpected began to stir. Nervous laughter, sarcasm. A man in Chicago shouted at the sky, "Hey, nice spaceship, but your parking is terrible." His friends laughed, even though their hands trembled. In another part of the world, a woman recorded herself holding up a sign that read, "Take us to your leader." Oops, forgot, ours is busy golfing. The video spread like wildfire online. At first, these moments seemed small, insignificant, a way for humans to deal with fear, but the aliens noticed. From their command decks high above Earth, they observed the reactions of billions of humans. They had expected terror, expected submission. They had come to conquer, not to be mocked. The alien leaders watched as humans made cartoons of their ships, comparing them to giant frying pans. Memes flooded the digital networks so quickly that even alien systems intercepted the strange human humor. Confusion spread among the invaders. They replayed the transmissions again and again, trying to analyze, why were humans not bowing? Why were they laughing? Meanwhile, world leaders argued in their hidden chambers. Some called for surrender, insisting that resistance was hopeless. Others demanded defiance, even if it meant extinction. But across the globe, it wasn't governments that set the tone, it was the people. The laughter grew louder, the jokes spread faster than fear, and with every laugh, the grip of terror loosened just a little bit more. The aliens sent another broadcast, this one sharper, more threatening. "You have 1 hour to obey, 1 hour or you will be destroyed." The words carried the weight of doom. Yet on Earth, the response was not the silence of despair. Instead, fireworks lit up the sky in some cities, as if people were mocking the ultimatum with their own light show. In small towns, bands played music in the streets, laughing and dancing beneath the alien glow. Humanity was afraid, yes, but it refused to show that fear in the way the invaders wanted. On news channels, anchors struggled to stay professional, but even they couldn't hide the smirks when showing viral clips of humans taunting the mothership. A group of students projected a giant middle finger made of laser lights onto the side of a skyscraper. Another group set up loudspeakers blasting comedy skits directed at the aliens. Each act was reckless, foolish, maybe even suicidal, but it was also strangely powerful. It was defiance, but not the kind the aliens had prepared for. Inside the mothership, alien commanders debated. Their kind had conquered countless planets, but never before had they faced a species like this. On every world they invaded, fear had been their weapon. Fear broke armies, fear broke civilizations, but here on Earth, fear was being twisted into humor. Laughter, it seemed, was stronger than terror. The aliens could not understand how this was possible. It shook them in ways they did not admit aloud. Back on the ground, children asked their parents why the aliens looked so serious. Parents, instead of crying, cracked jokes to calm them. Friends gathered in groups, not to mourn, but to make fun of their would-be conqueror. The mood was shifting. The fear was still there, deep inside. But humans were transforming it into something else, something unbreakable. And then, as the alien ships hovered silently above, the most important thing happened. For the first time in centuries, the people of Earth felt united. Borders, politics, old grudges, all of it faded. Rich or poor, east or west, believer or non-believer, it did not matter. Everyone was laughing at the same enemy. Everyone was mocking the same threat. In that moment, the aliens had no idea what they were facing. They saw only a primitive species armed with weak weapons and fragile bodies. They could not see the true weapon rising before their eyes, the unshakable spirit of humanity, wrapped in humor, defiance, and unity. The world held its breath, yes, but not in surrender. It was the breath before laughter, the breath before rebellion. And soon, That laughter would roar so loudly that even the stars themselves might hear it. The hour that the aliens had given came and went, but Earth did not kneel. The great ships hung above like silent mountains, waiting for obedience, but what came instead was noise, human noise. At first it was scattered. A comedian in Los Angeles opened a live stream and declared, "If you're going to invade, at least bring pizza." Millions tuned in, laughing even as the sky glowed with alien light. In India, a farmer painted a giant sign on his field that read, "Reserved parking for aliens." Planes captured the message from above, and within minutes, the image spread around the globe. The aliens tried again. Their deep, metallic voices cut through every device, repeating the demand for surrender. But this time, their words were drowned out by music blasting through city streets. A group of musicians in Berlin dragged their instruments outside and played a mocking tune, turning the alien broadcast into background noise for their impromptu concert. People danced in the streets under the gaze of the mothership. Some danced with fear still in their hearts, but the fear was being reshaped into something braver. Across social media, videos appeared faster than anyone could count. A man in Mexico put a colander on his head, waved a broom like a sword, and shouted, "I'm ready to defend Earth." The clip was ridiculous, yet it caught fire online. People copied him everywhere. Children in Africa, teenagers in Europe, workers in Asia, all creating their own parody versions. Billions laughed together, connected not by wires or satellites but by a shared refusal to bow. The aliens grew unsettled. Their advanced systems translated the endless stream of human speech, images, and sounds, but the meaning was elusive. Their logic told them these were acts of madness. On other worlds, fear had broken populations in hours. Here, the fear was being mocked, twisted into jokes. The alien commander watched the endless human transmissions, each one stranger than the last, and for the first time in his long career, he hesitated. On the ground, people began organizing public displays of defiance. In Sydney, thousands gathered at the harbor, pointing lasers into the sky as if tagging the alien ships. In Moscow, comedians filled a stadium and performed live jokes, their voices broadcast through giant speakers directly at the hovering vessels. In Cairo, schoolchildren released balloons shaped like crude alien heads, laughing as they floated up toward the mothership's shadow. Everywhere, the same message echoed. Humanity would not give fear. Humanity would give mockery. The aliens answered with a demonstration of power. A beam of light lanced down from one of the smaller ships, striking an empty desert in the Middle East. The sand melted into glass. A crater the size of a town left smoking in the night. It was a clear warning, a reminder of what they could do. For a moment, silence fell again across Earth. The images of the crater flashed across screens, and people swallowed hard. The fear returned. For a few seconds it almost seemed as if the laughter would die, but then a new video appeared. A man stood in the same desert, holding a frying pan. "Nice fireworks," he shouted at the sky. "But can you cook breakfast?" He cracked an egg onto the hot glass, letting it sizzle in the alien-made crater. The video spread in minutes, and soon people everywhere were laughing again. Even those who had been trembling moments before were wiping tears of laughter from their eyes. The aliens' warning shot had been turned into a comedy skit. Their power had been made a joke. In command centers underground, military leaders watched this unfold with disbelief. They had prepared weapons, strategies, evacuation plans, yet it was the ordinary people, the farmers, the comedians, the children who were holding the line, not with bullets but with laughter. Presidents and generals looked at one another, realizing they were no longer the leaders of this fight. Humanity itself, united by humor, had taken command. The aliens tried once more, sending a final warning. Their voice thundered louder, the language sharpened, dripping with rage. "Obey, or perish." But the words were barely finished when humans answered, not with silence, but with a roar of mockery. Entire stadiums filled with chanting crowds, singing songs about alien parking tickets, alien fashion, alien cooking shows. Television hosts dressed in shiny aluminum suits, pretending to be alien kings, demanding tribute of cheeseburgers and soda. Even religious leaders joined, some delivering sermons laced with jokes about how the invaders clearly needed a sense of humor, and through it all, the aliens watched, confused and shaken. They had the weapons to destroy continents, but none of their power could silence human laughter. Their threats had turned into fuel for jokes. Their fear tactics had become a comedy act. What should have been the easiest conquest in their empire's history was becoming something else entirely. Humiliation. Children stayed up late, sitting on rooftops and laughing at the glowing ships. Parents, instead of telling them to hide, joined in, Street performers dressed as aliens stumbled through cities, pretending to demand surrender before being chased off by kids with water balloons. Each joke, each laugh, was like a small victory. Together they built a wall stronger than steel, a wall that aliens could not breach. Above it all, the mothership remained silent. Its massive form still blotted out the stars. Its lights still painted the world in purple-blue. But inside, its commanders were no longer certain. They had expected Earth to bow. Instead, Earth was laughing in their faces. And as the hours passed, the laughter only grew louder, echoing through every street, every home, every heart. Humanity had spoken. Their answer was mockery. The alien mothership floated in silence, its enormous shadow stretching across oceans and continents. Inside the command chamber, the atmosphere was thick with unease. Tall figures with shimmering skin stood around glowing consoles, their many eyes scanning streams of human transmissions. Their voices clicked and hissed in frustration as the reports poured in, videos of humans laughing, dancing, mocking. They had demanded obedience. They had shown their strength. And yet, the humans answered with jokes. The commander, a creature who had led countless invasions, stared at the screens in disbelief. On one feed, he saw humans in costumes pretending to be aliens, wobbling around with oversized heads made of paper. On another, a crowd in South America sang a mocking song, waving banners that read, "Try harder." The commander's throat vibrated with a low growl. On every world they had conquered before, fear had crushed resistance in hours. But here, fear was being twisted into something they could not understand. Advisors argued among themselves. Some insisted the humans were hiding their fear, that this laughter was a mask, and beneath it they were trembling. Others warned that something deeper was happening, that humans were using humor as a weapon. The commander silenced them with a wave of his long hand. He studied the endless stream of human noise, his mind torn between anger and confusion. He ordered another demonstration of power. A fleet of smaller ships descended, firing beams that carved patterns into the oceans, sending giant waves crashing toward the shore. Cities trembled as alarms blared. For a moment, fear returned. People screamed and ran. But then, a fisherman uploaded a video of himself surfing the artificial waves, shouting, "Thanks for the free ride, aliens." The clip exploded online. Soon, thousands were joking about alien surfing lessons, and the terrifying display of destruction had turned into another global punchline. The aliens grew restless. Their weapons were unmatched, yet their strength was being mocked again and again. Each act of intimidation was swallowed by the strange human response. The commander felt something he had never felt before: embarrassment. His massive eyes narrowed as he studied Earth. This planet was small, its armies weak, its people fragile. Yet somehow they were dismantling his authority without firing a single shot. On the ground, humanity's boldness grew. Crowds gathered beneath the hovering ships, holding up signs with jokes that spread across the internet within minutes. Some signs read, "We already pay taxes, no more." Others said, "Come back when you bring snacks." The aliens could hear the chants, the translation systems feeding the words directly into their ears. The chants were not pleas for mercy. They were laughter made into rhythm. In a hidden bunker, human leaders watched the situation with disbelief. They had expected chaos, riots, collapse. Instead, people were uniting in a way that no politician had ever managed. World leaders were not the ones guiding this resistance, it was ordinary people, armed with humor, who were shaping the fate of the planet. Generals whispered to each other, some ashamed that their armies looked powerless compared to the courage of civilians with nothing but jokes. The aliens attempted direct communication with specific governments, offering them power in exchange for surrender. But those secret offers leaked almost instantly. Within hours, comedians were mocking the idea on live television, pretending to be politicians, begging aliens for jobs as assistant overlords. The crowd roared with laughter. And once again, the aliens' plan collapsed into ridicule. Inside the mothership, tension boiled. The commander demanded answers. Why could fear not work here? Advisors presented theories. One explained that humans had lived through centuries of war and disaster, and their minds had adapted. They did not break ice. Another said that humans used laughter to protect themselves, to shield their minds from despair. Whatever the truth, the result was the same: their empire's greatest weapon, psychological terror, was useless. As the aliens argued, more human broadcasts flooded their systems. In Japan, people created animated parodies of the mothership, turning it into a giant balloon animal. In Africa, street performers dressed as aliens were chased through crowds while everyone laughed. In America, late-night hosts broadcast entire shows dedicated to mocking the invaders. Their jokes shared by millions across the world. Humanity was laughing together as one, and the sound was becoming louder than the alien voice itself. The commander paced in fury, his long claws clicking against the metal floor. He considered destroying a city to restore fear, but even that thought unsettled him. Would the humans mourn, or would they turn even that into comedy? Would they make fun of their conquerors while standing in the ruins? For the first time, he was uncertain. Down on Earth, the laughter carried a new energy. People were no longer only joking out of nervousness. They were beginning to feel strong. The more the aliens tried to intimidate, the more confident humanity became. A strange unity was forming, not built on leaders or armies, but on a shared understanding that laughter itself was resistance. And so, while the motherships hovered above with all their terrifying might, inside them the seeds of doubt grew. The aliens had conquered countless worlds with fear, but here fear was powerless. Here they were being defeated not by weapons, but by something they could not control, something they could not even understand. The commander looked out at the blue planet below, its oceans glowing in the light of his ship, his jaws clenched. For the first time in his long career, he felt not victory in reach, but the possibility of failure. And that failure did not come from strength. It came from laughter. Across the world, laughter rolled like thunder. What had begun as scattered jokes was now a global movement. People in every country, speaking different languages, wearing different clothes, living in different ways, were suddenly sharing the same voice. That voice was not begging or pleading. It was laughing. For the first time in living memory, humanity was not divided. It was one. In villages where power was scarce, radios played recordings of comedians mocking the invaders. People gathered around fires, laughing into the night while alien ships floated above. In glittering cities, projectors lit up skyscrapers with images of cartoonish aliens being chased away by stick figures. In schools, children drew pictures of the motherships with silly faces and posted them on walls for all to see. From the poorest homes to the richest mansions, the tone was the same. Humor had become the great equalizer. The aliens watched in growing frustration. Their translators struggled to keep up with the endless flood of jokes, songs, and chants. At first, they thought it was chaos, but as they studied the patterns, a chilling truth became clear. This was not chaos. This was unity. The humans were binding themselves together with humor, forming a shield stronger than any weapon. On Earth, governments began to notice too. Presidents, prime ministers, kings, and generals realized that their own power seemed to matter less than the voices of ordinary people. The fear that once controlled their populations had evaporated, replaced by laughter. Instead of riots and collapse, there were festivals in the streets. Instead of chaos, there was music, comedy, and joy. Even soldiers began painting jokes on their vehicles, mocking the aliens while standing guard. The war was no longer about weapons. It was about spirit. In New York, a massive crowd gathered in Times Square. Giant screens that once showed advertisements now broadcast live comedy skits mocking the alien demands. People carried banners that said, "Earth, not for sale," and "Aliens go home. No refunds." The atmosphere was electric, filled with energy not of fear but of rebellion disguised as humor. The aliens' giant ship hovered above, but the people below pointed at it and laughed like it was nothing more than a tourist attraction. In Africa, entire communities joined together for nights of storytelling, where local performers acted out parodies of the alien invasion. They painted their faces silver and stomped around, pretending to be overlords demanding tribute of goats and chickens. Children rolled with laughter, their fear melting away. In Asia, street vendors sold cheap toys shaped like alien ships, and people waved them in the air like it was a carnival. In Europe, orchestras took 2 public squares, performing symphonies with playful twists, turning alien broadcasts into background music for their performances. The unity was undeniable. No politician had created it. No army had enforced it. It was born from the people themselves, spreading faster than any command or order. Humor was contagious, and it traveled across borders without resistance. People who had once seen each other as enemies were now laughing at the same jokes, sharing the same defiance. Humanity had found its strength in the most unexpected way. The aliens tried to divide them. They broadcast messages offering rewards to specific nations, promising power to those who would betray the others. But within minutes, those messages were turned into comedy skits. Actors dressed as greedy politicians fell to their knees, begging the aliens for jobs as assistant overlords, only to be kicked away by children playing heroes. The crowd roared with laughter. The attempt to divide humanity had backfired, uniting them even more. In the alien mothership, the commander felt something he had never felt before. His mighty fleet, the pride of his empire, was being reduced to the butt of jokes. His warriors, trained in fear and domination, now felt uneasy every time they heard the sound of human laughter echoing through their systems. What should have been victory was turning into humiliation. Meanwhile on Earth people celebrated their own courage. They were still afraid, deep down, but that fear no longer controlled them. They turned it into something brighter. A family in Brazil gathered on their rooftop, singing songs about aliens losing at soccer. A group of friends in Canada staged a mock surrender, waving white flags made of toilet paper rolls, before bursting into laughter. Everywhere, the message was clear: we will not bow. For the first time, humanity felt proud of itself, not for its technology, not for its weapons, but for its spirit. Ordinary people realized they were part of something larger than themselves, something powerful. Each laugh, each joke, was like a spark, and together those sparks became a fire that burned across the entire planet. Above them, the aliens remained silent. They had the power to destroy cities with a single strike, yet they hesitated. Deep inside, they feared what would happen if they did. Would humanity crumble, or would it turn destruction into one final, eternal joke? The commander's eyes narrowed. He was beginning to understand a terrible truth: this planet could not be conquered, not by force, not by fear. And so, as night fell across the earth, the people continued to laugh, sing, and mock the invaders. It was no longer just a response. It was a weapon. It was unity. And with every passing hour, the sound of that unity grew louder, echoing not just across the streets of Earth, but inside the very walls of the alien mothership. The mothership hung like a wounded predator, its lights flickering faintly against the night sky. On the surface, humanity kept celebrating, laughing, mocking, refusing to bend. Inside the alien command chamber, silence pressed against the walls. The commander's eyes shifted from one screen to another, each one filled with endless streams of human behavior. The recordings were bizarre to his mind. Children making paper spaceships, comedians shouting insults into microphones, entire stadiums filled with people chanting jokes at the sky. It was not war, it was humiliation. His officers avoided looking at him. They had conquered dozens of worlds, each one falling in terror. Yet here, this small blue planet had become a stage for mockery. Soldiers whispered among themselves, uneasy. They had trained for resistance, for armies, for rebellions, but how could they fight laughter? No strategy manual had prepared them for this. The commander ordered another strike. A smaller warship was told to target an uninhabited island. The blast was bright enough to turn night into day, vaporizing trees and rocks in a single heartbeat. For a moment, he felt relief. At least this show of force would silence the humans. But moments later, his screens filled with new transmissions. A video showed humans wearing sunglasses, joking, free tanning, courtesy of aliens. Another clip showed someone roasting marshmallows on the heat left behind by the blast. The destruction meant to terrify had been transformed into comedy within minutes. The commander's claws trembled against the metal floor. His voice cracked when he demanded answers. Why do they not break? His advisors exchanged nervous glances, none willing to answer. Finally, one dared to speak. Perhaps they are broken in a different way. Perhaps their laughter is their shield. The words only deepened the commander's frustration. On Earth, the mockery became sharper. People began writing songs dedicated to the aliens' failure. Street artists painted murals of humans standing tall while aliens slipped on banana peels. Radio stations broadcast comedy shows that mocked the alien voice, replaying it with silly accents. Everywhere the aliens looked, they saw themselves turned into clowns. Their empire's reputation was being shredded in real time, and they could do nothing to stop it. The commander's pride began to crumble. His soldiers looked at him not with admiration, but with doubt. He had promised them another swift victory. Instead, they were trapped above a planet that refused to fear them. Every hour they lingered, their humiliation grew. Whispers spread among the lower ranks. Some feared that if they returned home with this failure, the Empire itself would punish them. Meanwhile, humanity only grew bolder. In London, comedians filled the streets with giant puppets of alien commanders, waving oversized weapons made of cardboard. Crowds cheered as the puppets stumbled and fell. In Tokyo, giant billboards displayed parodies of the mothership, edited to look like a giant balloon animal floating in the sky. In Africa, drummers created rhythms that mocked the alien broadcast, turning the voice of fear into the beat of a festival. Everywhere, humans were laughing louder, and the louder they laughed, the more the aliens broke. Soldiers aboard the mothership struggled to concentrate on orders, distracted by the endless stream of human broadcasts. Some began to question why they were here at all. Others whispered that maybe these humans could not be conquered because they did not fear death, in the way others did. The commander grew desperate. He demanded silence, demanded obedience, demanded control, but even his own voice trembled now. He had seen rebellions crushed, empires expanded, but he had never seen this. These humans were using something invisible yet unstoppable. Their laughter struck harder than any weapon. Their jokes cut deeper than any blade. On Earth, unity had become unshakable. Borders meant nothing now. Enemies who once fought over land or faith now laughed together at the same alien joke. This unity made the commander's defeat feel even heavier. It was not just that humans resisted, it was that they resisted together. Their mockery was not scattered, it was synchronized, like a planet-sized orchestra playing the same song of defiance. The commander stared at Earth and saw not a weak species but a dangerous one. Dangerous not because of weapons, but because of spirit. Dangerous because they could not be controlled by fear. He realized with growing horror that if word spread of this humiliation, other worlds might rise against his empire too. His people had ruled through fear for centuries, but what if others discovered what humans had discovered, that laughter could destroy terror? Inside his chest, something cracked. It was not just anger anymore. It was dread. For the first time in his long life, the commander doubted his own power. The silence in the chamber was heavy, broken only by the faint echoes of human laughter, still streaming from every screen. Down below, humans kept celebrating. Fireworks lit up the sky, blending with the glow of alien ships. Families danced in the streets, children laughed without fear, and communities partied under the very shadows meant to terrify them. It was madness. It was bravery. It was humanity at its most defiant, and the aliens could do nothing. Their weapons meant nothing. Their threats meant nothing. Their empire, so proud and mighty, was being humiliated by a species that had chosen laughter over fear. The commander turned away from the screens, his eyes heavy. He could feel his empire's legacy slipping from his claws. What should have been an easy conquest had become a nightmare, and deep inside, he began to understand that the battle was already lost. The night stretched on, but humanity did not sleep. Streets that should have been empty in fear were alive with music and laughter. Fires burned in barrels, radios blasted comedy shows, and families gathered outside, pointing at the glowing motherships that still hovered above. Children, too young to understand the danger, drew chalk pictures on sidewalks of aliens tripping and falling. Even in silence, the ships no longer inspired terror. They inspired jokes. Inside the mothership, the commander felt the weight of defeat pressing against him. His soldiers avoided his gaze, their eyes dim with shame. Every screen in the chamber flickered with images of humans laughing. He could not escape it. No matter what channel he ordered, no matter what corner of Earth they watched, the same scene appeared, defiance dressed as comedy. The humans had turned his empire's greatest weapon, fear, into something powerless. Worse, they had turned his empire itself into a joke. He thought of the other worlds they had conquered. Entire civilizations had collapsed at the first sign of alien power. They had begged, pleaded, surrendered. These humans were different. They should have been the easiest victory. Instead, they had become the Empire's greatest humiliation. His claws clenched as the truth sank deeper. This battle could not be won. On Earth, people felt the shift even if they did not know it. The silence from the alien ships was louder than their threats had ever been. For days, the invaders had roared with confidence. Now they floated wordless above the planet, as if stunned into quiet. Crowds began to taunt them more boldly. In city squares, chants of "Go home" rose in unison. In villages, bonfires were lit, with people tossing effigies of aliens into the flames while cheering. The mockery was no longer nervous laughter. It was victory laughter. News anchors who had once trembled on live television now spoke with boldness. They replayed clips of the aliens' warnings side by side with human jokes, creating montages that had entire nations in stitches. Cartoonists drew aliens with oversized heads and confused faces, unable to understand why no one feared them. Late-night hosts declared the invasion the greatest comedy tour Earth had ever seen. What had begun as a defense mechanism had become the greatest unifying force in history. The commander gave one last order. His voice cracked as he demanded the fleet fire again, this time at a populated area. His officers hesitated. They had seen what happened each time before. Each attack, each show of power, had been twisted into mockery. One brave officer spoke the words no one wanted to say. "Commander, if we strike again, we will not inspire fear. We will only inspire more laughter." The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. The commander looked into the eyes of his soldiers and saw doubt staring back. They no longer believed in his power. They no longer believed in conquest. They were tired of being laughed at. He realized then that it was over, not just the invasion, but his control. And so, with a voice that no longer carried pride, he gave the order to retreat. Engines roared to life, and the colossal mothership began to rise. Smaller vessels pulled away from their positions, their lights dimming as they retreated into the sky. On Earth, people watched in stunned silence at first. Was this another trick? Was this another show of power? But as the ships climbed higher, disappearing one by one, realization spread. The aliens were leaving. The silence broke into a roar of celebration. Cheers erupted across every continent. Fireworks lit the skies above cities. Drums thundered in villages. Church bells rang. Humanity shouted, sang, and danced beneath the empty heavens. They had faced annihilation. They had faced an empire older and stronger than anything they had ever known. And they had won not with weapons, not with armies, but with laughter. The aliens' departure was recorded from every angle. Millions of cameras capturing the glowing ships as they vanished into the stars. Those recordings would be watched for centuries, proof that the day had come when Earth stood united and victorious. Historians would write about it. Children would learn about it. But for the people living it, the truth was simple. They had survived because they refused to surrender their spirit. Inside the retreating mothership, the commander slumped in his chair. He had no words. His empire would demand explanations, demand punishment. He had failed not because the humans were strong, but because they were unbreakable in a way he had never imagined. Their laughter haunted him, echoing in his mind louder than any weapon. He knew it would echo forever. Back on Earth, the celebrations lasted through the night and into the dawn. Strangers embraced in the streets. Families wept tears of joy. Old enemies shook hands. For the first time in centuries, humanity felt like one family, one people. They had discovered a truth hidden in plain sight. The strongest weapon was not fear, but unity. And unity could come from something as simple as laughter. As the sun rose, painting the sky gold, the world looked different. Cities were still scarred. Landscapes still burned from alien fire, but no one cared. What mattered was that the invaders were gone. Humanity had stared into the eyes of an empire and answered with mockery. They had turned terror into comedy, and comedy into strength. They had proved to themselves, and to the stars, that Earth would never bow. And somewhere in the endless dark of space, the defeated fleet drifted home, carrying not trophies of conquest but the memory of laughter that had broken them.